Well, good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Season 2020 update, part of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for August 19th, 2020, recorded around 8:37 a.m. Eastern Time. Well, we have a lot to discuss today, so go ahead and buckle up and get your favorite snack, and let's go ahead and begin. In all seriousness, though, we do have Hurricane Geneva out here in the Eastern Pacific Basin. This is now more of a concern to the Baja of California than previously thought. And the reason for that is this is taking on more of a north-northwest movement than more of a northwest movement. This is going to bring it closer to land. Again, not expecting a landfall, but you can never say never. And again, we do have hurricane watches that are in effect for portions of the Baja of California. Again, all the way over into the California peninsula side of things. So again, hurricane watches are in effect, and you can see the surrounding tropical storm force wind field over here in this like orangish color. As this moves off towards the northwest here, or north-northwest, or north rather, even it's moving a little bit due north, and we'll show that here in a minute. This wind field is going to encompass the whole entire Baja of California. Now, not everyone is going to see tropical storm force winds in this little field here, but the majority of the Baja of California could see, 40, 50, maybe 60 mile per hour winds. Certainly, if this core comes a little bit closer, you're talking now hurricane force winds for portions of the Baja. Not expecting a landfall, as this should turn away, but the latest trend has been closer towards the Baja of California. In addition to the heavier rain, this is going to produce obviously some flash flooding concerns, gusty winds from time to time. And on top of that, that's also going to produce some rough surf and swell conditions, of course, ahead of this, and also even behind it. This will promote some heavier surf in this vicinity, all the way up and down here, the Baja of California, even all the way into the Mexican coastline still. The threat for heavy rip currents, high tides, etc., that exists, and that's a problematic threat in itself. So if you live in those areas, especially the Baja of California, near the Cabo San Lucas resort areas, etc., you need to be taking your necessary hurricane preparedness plans and have your completions rushed. You need to have your preparations rushed to completion by today, as those impacts will begin later today and tonight across this area. And again, you should be monitoring your local weather service office and government officials for the latest information regarding this hurricane. But again, this will be moving off towards the west-northwest here, or generally off towards the northwest. Get dangerously close to the Baja of California. We can see that here in the IR satellite loop here from tropicaltidbits.com. This looks to be a little bit concerning this morning, as it's taking more of a direct northward component of motion that brings it closer to the Baja. And again, these are the little signs that you look for right now. Is this rather turning away, or is this kind of continuing up? And again, the closer that it gets before making that turn is the higher potential for A, a landfall, and B, for more serious impacts. And again, this is still a Category 3 major hurricane on approach into the Baja of California. You can see, though, heavy rain bands already encompassing these areas out and through here. Heavy rain, flash flooding, gusty winds. The core is still well offshore here, but again, you can see that core is moving almost due north right for the Baja and the Cabo San Lucas resort areas. This is going to be a little bit concerning. And again, the trends today will kind of dictate what happens. You can see, more notably, though, we do have more deep convection around the core that is helping to kind of sustain its Category 3 major hurricane intensity. A little bit smaller of a system, though, that is allowing it to, rapidly increase and decrease in intensity changes. So that's going to play a part. But again, for the Baja of California, you need to have your preparations rushed to completion today and be following your local weather service offices and government officials for the latest information and specific details for your area. Now, in the Atlantic Basin, we do have Invest 97L with a 80% chance of becoming a tropical cyclone over the next 5 days. Excuse me. And this is going to be moving in the general direction of Central America, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Belize. That's kind of moving in that general vicinity here over the next couple of days. And again, this, we'll kind of zoom in here a little bit. This is going to pose a land threat potential for those areas. So while we do not have a tropical storm, a tropical depression even coming out of 98L currently, once it gets into this area in the world here over the next about 5 to 6 days or so, the window is going to start opening for what will likely be a more favorable environment, at least briefly a more favorable environment. What's going to happen, though, is as this gets dragged more this way, eventually an upper trough is going to come through. That's going to end up picking this up and maybe inducing some wind shear. And we'll talk about that here in a moment here. But again, the general consensus is that this is going to move off towards the west-northwest here. And again, for you folks in Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Belize, even, portions of Cuba over there, Central America, you need to be monitoring the progress of 97L, as at the very least, this is going to bring a heavy rainfall and gusty wind threat potential to those respective areas over the next coming days. And again, mudslides, flash flooding, that's a big concern. It does not take a powerful Category 5 hurricane to cause significant damage. Flash flooding will certainly do that, and in a very quick heartbeat. So just be aware that you have a tropical disturbance that has a high likelihood of becoming something better organized, but at the very least, heavy rainfall, flash flooding, mudslides, gusty winds, and some of those squally conditions, that is certainly going to impact those areas over the next coming days or so. Excuse me. And that is going to provide a risk over the next coming days for people along the coast, people farther inland. So if you live in those areas, you need to be monitoring the progress of this. It will be an impactful event. To what extent, obviously, we don't know. Whether it's a tropical storm or whether it's a disorganized, broad, open wave, by the time it reaches, the Western Caribbean here, we don't know that. But the bottom line is it looks like that something is trending in a more favorable position to eventually organize down the road here in the Caribbean, the Western Caribbean, and we'll talk about why that is here in a moment. Now, if we take a look here at the IR satellite, this is again from Tropical Tidbits, and a couple of things to point out here. First of all, you notice that we have a very loosely disorganized system, and we can actually switch here to the visible satellite to give us a better understanding of what's actually going on. You can see, yes, we do have showers and thunderstorms, but you notice these arc clouds. These are actually outflow boundaries extending away from collapsing thunderstorms. And, if you've ever, seen an outflow boundary on radar, on satellite, whatever, you know that they form from developing and collapsing thunderstorms as the cold air rushes to the ground. Basically, thermodynamic, transportation of the air from the colder cloud tops all the way down to the surface that fans out, etc. Just some meteorology there, but this is an outflow boundary, and that is caused by these collapsing thunderstorms. Right now, 97L remains this kind of blobby, pulsy type system, almost like your summertime thunderstorms. They pop up, they collapse, they pop up, and they collapse. Obviously, this is over a little bit more of a larger area and a little bit more organized than that. First of all, for starters, we do have a trough axis. We have this very sharp trough axis here that's kind of dotted in this area right here. That is the trough axis right now, and you can see that it's not exactly tilted on a north to south orientation like that. However, it is going to start to do that over the next couple of days or so. And again, there's also a secondary wave over Venezuela currently that is going to kind of meet up with this moving system here over the next coming days. That might help to induce a little bit more cyclonic turning in the atmosphere and increase the overall favorability in the background environment itself for 97L to be taking advantage of. But currently, it's rather disorganized, although you can see here, we kind of play this at a little bit slower of a animation here. You can see some of those cloud features there out here kind of moving and streaming in closer to the system. So that is indicative that we are getting closer to having a closed off center of circulation. Obviously, once that happens, then we have the system that has now become a tropical cyclone. We're getting closer to that point, but right now it's still an open wave axis that's kind of just positioned something like that, loosely like that. And that whole wave energy is moving off towards the west-northwest here over the next few days or so, and will eventually find itself in a better environment out in this area down in here. But again, you can see the heavy rainfall threat with it, certainly. If you get under any of these thunderstorms, they are going to produce heavy rain, gusty winds, flash flooding potential for sure. So just be mindful of that as the system kind of comes into those respective areas. Now, talking about Invest 98L. I told you, we have a lot to talk about. Invest 98L has a 90-90 shot of becoming a tropical cyclone over the next 5 days. And I believe that it's well on its way to becoming a tropical cyclone, and I'll show you why that is here in a moment. But once again, this has a threat too, also with land, in mind here. This has also another potential for the Lesser Antilles. So while you kind of dodged a bullet with 98L down here, or 97L down here, you'll have to watch 98L. And again, as I've said, the longer it takes to get better organized is the longer it's going to, or the further west it's going to get, the longer it takes to become a tropical storm or depression or exactly whatever. That's because a stronger storm tends to go further off towards the north, while a weaker system tends to go further west in the trade winds. So again, over the next few days, this has a 90% chance of becoming a tropical cyclone, whether it's a depression storm or whatever. But again, this needs to be watched for the Lesser Antilles, because this is going to get close to those areas, and a lot hinges on whether or not this actually tries to develop within the next 24 hours or so. Because if it does that, it will probably kind of try to sneak a little bit north of the islands, but it's going to be too close to call, and it's hard to determine that at the moment. And again, impacts could begin, later this week into this weekend across the area. Today's Wednesday. And obviously tomorrow being Thursday, this is going to get closer into the weekend time frame for the Lesser Antilles. Now, is this going to be a powerful hurricane, on approach to the Lesser Antilles? The answer right now does not seem to be yes. Of course, we need to monitor everything, but the answer right now seems to be no, that we are not going to have a powerful major hurricane on approach into the islands, which is obviously good news. But even a weak tropical depression or a weak tropical storm will do the trick in terms of flash flooding, heavy rain, etc. Now, this will likely stay north of Trinidad and Tobago down here, Barbados too. I don't think that you guys are going to have to deal with 98L. I don't think you guys are going to have to deal with that. This should stay far enough off towards the north that you guys are going to be okay from it. Barbados might get some very outer rain periphery bands, but because it is a larger system, it's not a very small, compact system. With that being said, for those areas, though, you need to be monitoring, as always. It's hurricane season, so I don't really need to explain that. But you guys need to be monitoring, the progress of 98L and every tropical wave. It is near the peak of the season, so just bears to be watching. But for you folks up here in the northern Antilles, all the way down to St. Croix and Puerto Rico, yes, you guys need to be monitoring the progress of this pretty closely, because the model guidance today and over the last few days, some of it's been, not so reliable, has tried to take this pretty close to those islands. Now, again, whether it's a weak depression storm or whatever, I don't know that answer, and no one knows until we have a definitive system that forms. And we talked about this same thing with Hurricane Isaias a couple of weeks ago. We talked about how we needed a closed low-level center to determine where this thing was going to go. We need to have the same thing with 98L, and for that matter, even 97L. A non-closed low-level center makes it hard for the models because they're guessing. Sometimes they, actually vortex shadow. They basically drop a, in essence, they basically create a phantom vortex, and a lot of the times the models get it wrong, because that phantom vortex is only generated when there's not a background vorticity spin there. So that the models do weird things, and I don't know how all that works. I'm not a model expert, but the models have been very inconsistent, and there's a lot of reasons why, and I'll show you that here in a moment. If you take a look here at the visible satellite, though, this is looking a lot more impressive today, certainly, than it did yesterday. Notice the eastern blob of convection, it's no longer there. This eastern ball of convection kind of dissipated and evaporated yesterday into a lot more of this dry, stable air out here. And you notice now that we're getting a lot more of this bundling effect right now associated with 98L. You notice that we have a pretty good turning over here, pretty good easterly flow, a northeasterly flow there. And then we also have kind of that cyclonic curvature off towards the southwest there, off towards kind of the south-southwest, northeast, and then you kind of have that off towards the northwest. So we do have a background cyclonic spin in the atmosphere over here, and that is likely to end up developing into a tropical depression or storm. And again, the scatterometer passes are really going to help. Now, we do have aircraft reconnaissance, I do believe, that is flying out tomorrow into both 97 and 98L. So both systems, both invests, will have recon in them tomorrow afternoon, I believe. So we'll have to monitor that, of course, very carefully. But this certainly looks like that it is trying to become a tropical depression or storm right now. And again, you can just see, with your own eyes, that is certainly cyclonic spin in the atmosphere, and that's doing very well. You probably have a little bit still of displaced convection. It's not right over the center, but you can clearly see that rotation, and I don't think it takes, rocket scientists to figure that one out. So, yes, there is some dry air, though. You can see these arc clouds further off towards the southeast of the system, but our system is kind of holding up pretty fair right now. And I'll talk about some of the challenges that it is going to face here over the next few days. Now, real quick, we do have another tropical disturbance. This has not been designated an invest as of right this second, so it's disturbance 3. Has a 20% chance of developing over the next 5 days as this too heads off towards the west. So we have a lot to talk about, and it's going to be a busy few weeks, that's for sure. And we talked about how this was coming. We talked about this. We knew it was coming. It's here. And what more can I say? So with that being said, though, this is the 850 millibar vorticity product from the Central University of Wisconsin-Madison site here. Again, this is the spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground. And a couple of things that you're looking for is these reds and whites. This is actually your signature, your cyclonic spin with Hurricane Geneva out here in the Eastern Pacific Basin. And again, that's going to pose a threat for the Cabo San Lucas resort areas in the Baja here over the next day or so. This is actually the signature associated with 97L, and then this conglomerate mess, I believe, is 98L. I think this is what we're looking for right here. So 97L will start here. First of all, again, it's still loosely organized. It's got a good energy field associated with it. And if it can hold that, it certainly has a chance out here in the Western Caribbean. But that really needs to bundle. We need more focusing on the convection, and we need that trough axis, that wave axis and that wave envelope to actually consolidate and close off into an actual circulation, a low-level circulation that's closed. They can close the isobars, basically, the lines of equal pressure. That's what isobars are. But you need a closed low-level center to kind of determine anything. And again, we don't have that at the moment, so it's a little bit hard to determine 97L. But again, it's getting there, and it will likely have a shot once it reaches the Western Caribbean here over the next few days. For 98L, we do have much of the same story, although you can definitely see a lot more bundling of the energy, although, again, we still have a fairly stretched out surge of, energy coming off of Africa right here. And this, again, is one of the main concerns, because if this can't bundle up into its energy, it's going to move just straight through. It's not going to have a lot of time to actually develop, etc., before it's on top of the islands. That's why I said for the islands you need to be monitoring. But this does have a little bit better of an energy field associated with it today than it did yesterday. That's certainly a good thing going forward. And we'll just have to monitor the progress of this. Again, it's really trying to tighten up today. And it would not surprise me if we actually had a tropical depression by later this afternoon, or certainly by tomorrow. That certainly would not surprise me in the very least at all. Now, let's talk about the upper ocean heat content. Let's talk about the actual favorability pattern upcoming for both systems. Excuse me, my throat is very dry today. I don't know why. But what we're going to be looking at here, let me take a drink of water first. All right, much better. So, with that being said, the upper ocean heat content is very favorable in this part of the world right here, especially in the Western Caribbean, the Southwestern Atlantic, the Bahamas, off the coast of Florida. This area is pretty stifling in terms of the upper ocean heat content values. And I've seen some people throw around, the upper ocean heat content doesn't matter if you have a fast-moving system, blah, blah, blah. It matters. And you can really see that in the Southwestern Atlantic Basin and, in the Caribbean, these numbers are literally off the top of the scale here. And basically what this is showing us is that we have a good water depth. We have a good 80-degree isotherm down at a fairly significant depth in the water. So basically, when these tropical cyclones come in through here, let's just say hypothetically, one comes into here, right? Well, it typically upwells cooler water. Well, instead, it's upwelling nearly about the same, same temperature as it was previously at this very surface, if not just a little bit cooler. So that helps to kind of drive the tropical cyclone to strengthen, to fire more deep convection, and it doesn't cause as much of an upwelling effect, which in turn, it really helps these tropical cyclones go through, diabatic processes and, other meteorological and thermodynamic things. But these numbers are just concerning. And I talked about this in the beginning of the season, that if something comes along to take advantage of this, we're in trouble if the favorability everywhere else is more than sufficient and favorable. And again, yes, there's going to be hurdles with both systems, but they are moving into a pocket of relatively high upper ocean heat content, with 98L over in this region. And obviously, we're looking for 97L out in this region, where these upper ocean heat content values are ridiculous. I don't remember the last time we saw something like this, maybe in 2017 and maybe in 16. But these numbers are concerning, and I'm not trying to hype anything or scare anyone. These numbers are concerning because if you get a tropical cyclone to come along and take advantage of it, it will strengthen. And that's just simple meteorological processes and thermodynamic processes there at work, and other oceanic processes as well. But the bottom line is that this area, yes, it is more than favorable in this part of the world right here. And we'll really have to watch that over the next few days as these systems try to end up developing. And another way we can take a look at this here is the actual sea surface temperatures. This is the CDAS methodology from tropicaltidbits.com. And again, all of these 31 Celsius water temperatures out here in the western part of the Atlantic Basin and the western Caribbean as well. These 29 degree isotherms, 28, 29 Celsius water temperatures out here in the far western tropical Atlantic and the main development region. Yeah, that's concerning. You know, even out here in the Bahamas. And again, you know, I talked about this very early in the season, that if something does not come along to take advantage of this or to cool these sea surface temperatures down, and we saw that a little bit with Hannah, but these rebounded well since then. And, you know, these, you know, even for what it's worth, you know, Isaias that, you know, came up, you know, generally kind of through, you know, this area, these water temperatures, you know, are very, very, very warm. And again, those upper ocean heat content numbers reflect that. And if you have something in this environment out in here somewhere in this vicinity, you know, you got to be lucky if, you know, you don't get a hurricane out of it, you know. So I'm just saying, you know, if everything else lines up and you kind of line all your ducks up basically, well, you get what I'm saying. You paint an ugly picture. Now, thankfully, it looks like that at least for 97L, we're going to have an upper level trough that comes in through here that might induce some vertical wind shear. But there's a big caveat to that, because if it moves a little bit slower, there is the potential that the trough either may not be there, or that trough is going to start now eroding, and thus that wind shear is going to start to decrease. And you put, you know, 2 and 2 together. So I'm not going to go beyond that, but you put 2 and 2 together and it's just an ugly picture. And, you know, certainly this doesn't help, you know, going in towards the peak of the season anyway, with even water temperatures all the way up to the, you know, North Carolina coast here, about, you know, 28, 29 Celsius off the, you know, South Carolina, North Carolina coast here off Florida, you know, just stifling hot. You know, I think some buoys are like 92, 93 Fahrenheit. So these water temperatures are ridiculous up near the shelf. And even though that's, you know, yeah, that's shallower, it's still, you know, it's fuel for these hurricanes and tropical cyclones in general. So that's a problem. But on with that, though, this is now, we'll take a look here at the modeling. This is the HVAS model. Excuse me. I need to take another water break here. All right, much better. This is the HVAS model here from the NOAA AML site. This also comes from the Hurricane Research Division over there. I think they're in Lakeland, because I think that, I mean, that's where the aircraft operations are for the hurricane hunters. But anyway, so again, you can see here are things are labeled 97L and 98L. First of all, we'll start off by saying that this is the ridge of high pressure that is responsible for forcing these systems further to the west and not pushing them on out to sea like that. And, you know, we also talked about this in the very beginning of the year, that the, you know, stronger water temperatures out here, you know, higher than normal, causes a stronger ridge. And that stronger ridge is very important. And you take another drink of water. These, you know, those water temperatures drive the strength of the Bermuda High and the Bermuda Azores High. And this is certainly something very significant. I don't know why my mouse did that. This is something very significant here over the next few days, as this generally moves off towards, you know, the west-northwest or so. And then for 97L, much of the same story. This allows it to gain a little bit of latitude, but still, we'll just move this forward here enough in time. This is by hour 60. You notice 97L coming together, 98L coming together. And you notice what now starts to happen, excuse me, with both with both systems. First of all, they gain organization, but also with the strength of the ridge here, it starts to shift further back off towards the west. And this is something that's concerning, because again, if you get a system that, let's just say, avoids land interaction in through here, it can push past some of the hurdles in through this vicinity. It has a relatively favorable environment out ahead of it. And I'm not going to speculate beyond that point, but you can see here in the model fields that both systems will run that out here to the 120-hour time frame, the 5-day mark. And, 5 days, it's within a reasonable time frame. But first of all, it's the strength of the ridge. It's really building back in here further off towards the west. And it's not allowing, because this trough actually is starting to erode and weaken and kind of just fizzle out. This, ridge isn't getting broken down. And it's actually strengthening as it moves further west. It builds back in. This big ridge sends 98L, or whatever comes of 98L, off towards the west-northwest into the portions of the Turks and Caicos and Bahamas. 97L starts to intensify down here in the Gulf of Mexico. And, again, I can't really say for certain whether or not that's going to happen or not, because obviously until we have a closed center, until the Hurricane Center can fly recon in there, until recon can get in there, tomorrow, me and other meteorologists, I'm not one yet, but, we don't have a general understanding of what really is going to happen, because ultimately we don't have a closed center yet. And the models have been wish-washy, and we talked about how some of them aren't going to, how they're, not going to develop it, and some of them are going to develop it. So it really depends. It really kind of depends, and we'll just have to wait and see. So again, we'll wait and see what happens from there. But the bottom line is that we do have something to watch here over the next few days or so. And, the same here on the H-Wharf, you can kind of see how, pretty good moisture field associated with it now. And we're not going to, scream over the H-Wharf entirely. But, you can see that, that the H-Wharf, it's loosely organized for a while. Then it, tries to tighten it up. The one thing that's going to happen, and we can see this here on the GFS forecast, if we shift our attention to the upper air stuff, if they have it, they might not. Here it is. That's what I was looking for. So first of all, again, you can kind of see what we're looking at here over the next few days. Now, as 98L kind of moves off towards the west-northwest, there is a PV streamer, a potential vorticity streamer, something like that, something meteorological. But this PV streamer, what it ends up doing is it actually induces a little bit of wind shear across our system. And again, if our system isn't already strong by this point in producing this diabatic outflow right here, it is not going to be able to kind of butt against this PV streamer and push it away. And thus, there will be some induced shear in this region. We can actually see that here on the GFS forecast, that the, kind of the upper airflow right now gets entrained, and you have shear getting entrained into the system. Much of the same happens on the European, and in fact, the Euro doesn't even develop this at all. This is the 0Z run. So, but again, what I do want to bring your attention to is we'll move it back here to the 850 vorticity. And we'll move this back at the hour zero time frame. Notice what's happening. Notice that we're getting mostly easterly winds, right? Go back to the visible. We don't have just easterly winds, right? So the modeling is not capturing the environment well, and thus I'm more tending to disregard the solutions of the GFS and the Euro, and even it's on some of the Euro ensembles. And that's not just because, whatever, I want a system to develop. No, but, it's not the case. But I don't have faith that these models are actually resolving the atmosphere in its entirety, because you notice what's happening. These aren't easterly winds. Yeah, there is some turning down here, but that's not where our turning really is. Most of these still are westerly winds, most of these are easterly on the model field, not the other way around, and you're not getting that background cyclonic vorticity. And yes, that plays a very significant role in the modeling going forward. Thus, if it can't resolve the current atmosphere, it will not resolve adequately 5 days or beyond, even 3 days, even 2 days. It is not going to adequately resolve things because the initial conditions are wrong. So I just kind of want to throw that out there. If you're unfamiliar how the modeling works, it's basically all these numerical numbers and, all that nice math stuff. So just a little bit for you. But again, this is the 97L tracks here as of the 6Z run here. And again, don't focus really so much beyond, this time frame. Again, just be aware that there's a large spread. It really could go anywhere from where the GFS, that's the AVIN model, takes it, all the way into Mexico, or it could make a run into the Gulf of Mexico. Again, the modeling does not adequately resolve a lot of these things, before we get a closed low-level center. It's going to be harder to depict where this is going to go. And we have, almost the entirety of the Gulf of Mexico in a spread here. And that's what the exact opposite of what you want to see. You want to see something with tight consistency, all the modeling either indicating, okay, yeah, that's going to go over Mexico, or yeah, that's going to move into the Gulf, something like that, right? Instead, you have the whole entire Gulf here in these model spreads, And that is one of the main things is, again, we just don't know. It's too early in the game. The bottom line is there is something to watch, and this is something we're going to be likely talking about over the next couple of days. And the same thing goes here with 98L. Again, more of the modeling is tightly compact here, certainly, than 97L. But again, it's too early to determine what, if any, impacts are going to occur beyond, the Lesser Antilles, and out here, Florida, the Bahamas, whatever. Too early to determine. We don't know. And to be honest with you, we're not going to know until really recon gets in there and we have a closed low-level center that is an easily trackable feature. All right? So that being said, that is going to be my video update for today. Again, the bottom line is there is something to watch here over the next couple of days or so with both 97 and 98L. I will be back later this afternoon, probably roughly maybe around 4 o'clock-ish or so. I'm going to do some yard work and stuff right now, so got to get that stuff done. I will be back later with a second video discussion going over the latest, the latest morning guidance and all that jazz. All right. That being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your morning and early afternoon. I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again later this afternoon.